Good. So I would like to explain a little bit about these two terms that came up yesterday that were translated as exalted wisdom and consciousness. Exalted wisdom, not the greatest translation, because the term yeshe in Tibetan, jnana in Sanskrit, has many different meanings. And one meaning, which I think is probably where you get the exalted wisdom from, is that during the it is the deep awareness that you have during what an Arya has during total absorption on voidness, and the awareness that they have during the subsequent attainment. Those are called deep awareness. So it's probably coming from that it's translated as, exalted wisdom. But there are other meanings of the word, and another contexts in which the word is used, and these are the 5 types of deep awareness, the so-called 5 Buddha wisdoms. And for that, I'm just thinking how extensively I should explain this. You probably have a lot of questions, so so maybe not give a super extensive explanation. But that ye of yeshe, why I call it deep awareness, is that it is deep in the sense of profound. So that's the meaning, with the connotation, when it is the deep awareness of an Arya during total absorption and subsequent attainment. But it also has the meaning of primordial, that primordial means that it is there from beginningless, on the deepest level, and there with no beginning. So this is 5 types of ways in which the mind works. Basic. Everybody's mind works like this, and you have a basis level, a path level, and a resultant level. The resultant level is with the Buddha. That's why it's referred to as the 5 Buddha wisdoms, but actually you have a basis and a path and a resultant level. The old Serkong Rinpoche used to teach this very much, and not that often taught in Gelugpa. But the basis, we're talking about mirror-like deep awareness, equalizing, individualizing, accomplishing, and sphere of reality, Dharmadhatu, deep awareness. So on the basis level, this is what I was saying the worm has. And it's very important, I teach this as a meditation practice, to recognize this, of how our consciousness, how our minds work. It's taking in the information, that's the mirror-like. So we all take in information, it's just that we don't pay attention to it all, but all that information comes in. I'm looking at all of you, and all the information of what you're wearing is coming in. I'm not paying attention to what you're wearing, but if I considered it important, I would pay attention to that. So within the sense field, we pay attention to various things, what we find important or interesting, but that information is coming in like a mirror. So the worm has that as well. And for us, it's limited in terms of what we pay attention to. For a Buddha, pays attention to everything. Right? So then there is the equalizing awareness, and the equalizing is putting things together into like a category, seeing the similarity of things. So I can put together that these three humans are men, and this woman, this one, and that one are female. So I put it together. And the Buddha, on the resultant level, puts all beings together as everybody wants to be happy, everybody is equal, and so on. So, but we are able to do that. So a worm can do that as well, of putting various breadcrumbs or whatever together as food equally. And then there is the individualizing, that although these three are men, I can, I know individually, this one and that one and that one. So it's not like, if I were teaching that, not necessarily that, the same thing would suit each one. So a worm can do that as well with, different pieces of food. Will individualize, the one that it's going to eat. And a Buddha would know how to teach each being, as an individual, like that. And then there's accomplishing, which is to know what to do. The worm knows what to do with this thing in front of it, to eat it. So we know, what to do with various things. To eat something, to put it in your mouth, not put it in up your nose or whatever. So it's very, very basic. And a Buddha would know how to benefit all beings, individually, how to accomplish what is of benefit. And then the sphere of reality is to both the conventional and deepest reality. So conventional, we know what something is. Worm knows that this is food. It doesn't necessarily give a name to it, but it knows what it is. And we know what things are. And on the deepest level, of course, it would be the voidness, but deepest level that, that it's impermanent or whatever. I mean, we don't really have too much access to the deepest level, but the conventional level, on the basis level we have. And then on the path level, it's developed more and more, and then when it becomes fully operational, then it's as a Buddha. So those are these 5 types of deep awareness. Deep in the sense that they are, on the deepest level, how the mind works, and it is one aspect of Buddha nature as described usually in the Tantra systems. You have 5 families. Well, I wasn't going to go into that. But when you talk about Buddha nature, you're talking about families of characteristics. And there are 5 of them, either on the level of body, so the 5 Dhyani Buddhas, the level of speech, the level of mind. These are these 5 types of deep awareness. The level of activity, and the level of good qualities. So there's 5. So there's those 5 families, and each of those 5 families have 5 families. So that's the full one aspect of Buddha nature discussed in Tantra, how you get these families. Anuttara Yoga has the 5 families. So this is the what I wanted to point out. There's also another system which you have from the 3rd Karmapa. It's prominent in the Karmakargyu tradition, which is deep awareness and consciousness is actually, if you the way that it is divided, Vijnana Nambarsheba, it's dividing awareness. So the deep awareness is not dividing into object and consciousness as 2 separate truly established things separate from each other. That this is sometimes called, non-duality. And then Nambasheba, consciousness is seeing them divided as separate, truly established things. So this is another system of those two terms than the third karmapa. So that was what I wanted to explain about that. Okay? Now, questions? Yes? Oh, I can also point out to you, because I just pointed it out to Rinpoche, I looked it up, that in Chandrakirti's commentary, there was this line, Rinpoche read it, it was read in English, that with craving as a cause, you have increasing karma. Well, I looked it up in Sanskrit, and it is throwing karma, not increasing karma, because there's one letter at the end of the Tibetan word that in the Tibetan edition is pelwa, so like an L at the end, and obviously a drop of water or something fell on the manuscript, and it should have been an N, the Tibetan letter N, rather than the Tibetan letter L, and then it is actually from the Sanskrit, it is throwing karma. So a letter got obviously smudged or something like that, and then some scribe wrote a different letter there, and then you get, increasing karma because it's another word, and then you get, the clever mind can make sense of anything, and so then you get a whole tradition of explaining that term. But this is a very good example of these sort of things that happen with the manuscripts. So again, Sanskrit, very, very helpful. So we shouldn't think, that there aren't mistakes in these texts. Yes?
We were talking
sort
about...
Sort of Schadenfreude comes from that.
Schadenfreude.
Yes. Right. Joy at a mistake is for those who don't know German. Rejoicing in a mistake. Yes.
We were talking about the 4 forms of existence, the death existence, then intermediate existence, and birth existence. And
the 4 phases, they're not
phases,
different.
Yeah. And the last one, the 4th one, was then the manifest existence.
Wrong.
And there was some discussion about that, so I did not get what is the real thing.
No, my dear. When you hear the word, it's pronounced exactly the same. Ngomba Siba, it is Ngomba, and Ngomba can mean manifest if the prefix of the word is the Tibetan letter M, but actually the prefix is the Tibetan letter S, pronounced exactly the same, and it means before existence. It is the existence before the next death. So you have to know the spelling of the word, but if you just hear it, it's exactly the same.
So it's the span between birth and death.
Right, it's before the next death. Your existence before the next death, between conception. It's not birth out of the womb. It's conception and death, because you could die in the womb.
Okay. And then I have...
Pardon?
Then I have 2 more questions coming from Marina, and I will translate for her.
Yes.
She asked what is the best way of practice to hold bodhicitta in bardo?
Well, the best way to hold bodhicitta in bardo is to practice trying to have lucid dreaming. Well, not even necessarily lucid dreaming. I mean, ideally to be able to retain it in dreaming, but to try to be well, obviously, if you could retain it in dreaming, that it is, and why would it be retained in dreaming? You think about dreaming. Dreaming is from a Western point of view, medical point of view, it is basically processing the experiences of the day and making like neural pathways and so on, so the memory. So it is, and cleaning the brain of, garbage. So if you have thought about it during the day a great deal, then it's going to come in your dreams. I mean, I find this very true. If I spend the whole day working on a Sanskrit manuscript about karma, which is what I spend many of my days doing, then, so I've become obsessive about it. But anyway, then that comes in my dreams. I'm thinking about karma, and I'm thinking about, the text. I can even see the text and so on. It's ridiculous. So it is processing what you have during the day. So if you are thinking about bodhicitta all day long, but a lot, let's say, then it should come in your dreams. And if it comes, if that imprint is strong enough to come in your dreams, it should come in the bardo as well. But then there's the practice to recognize that I'm in the bardo, which is to try to recognize while you're awake that this is like a dream. And then you'd be able to recognize as well, not only when you're dreaming, but also bardo, that it's like a dream, so you don't get freaked out in bardo.
And the second part of the question was, when this practice is working out, will it lead to a human rebirth?
If you have, may attain enlightenment for the benefit of all beings, will it necessarily lead to, well, we don't just want a human rebirth, but we want a precious human rebirth. It should, in theory, but, what are the causes for a precious human rebirth? It is ethical self-discipline, supplemented by the other paramitas, the other far-reaching attitudes, and prayers to have a precious human rebirth. So I wouldn't, just leave it at, bodhicitta. May I attain enlightenment. In order to attain enlightenment, may I continue to have precious human rebirths, so I can continue further and further on the path. Like that. Which then reminds me of sort of an aside, which forgive me if I always put in these aside little pieces from my teachers, but, a lot of people, not a lot of people, but some people want to achieve shamatha so that they can remember past lives and so on. What's the point of remembering a past life? Remember your name, where you lived, so what? The point of remembering your past lives is that I want to remember everything that I learned in my past lives, so I don't have to learn it all again. That's what you want, why you want to remember past lives. I mean, then of course there is to help others, the karmic causes and these sort of things. That's a different level. But just, in general, what information would you want from your own past lives? It would be what I learned, that, revive that again.
Die Gewissheit, dass es Reinkarnation gibt.
Pardon?
Die Gewissheit, dass es Reinkarnation gibt. Es ist kein Glaube, sondern Gewissheit.
What he's saying is that it will give you certainty about rebirth. That could also be,
Well,
let's say,
will
an
it give you
effect of
certainty about rebirth? Well, I had a discussion earlier with someone about rebirth. And what convinces us of rebirth is okay. When you approach Buddhism and you're confronted with rebirth, which is everywhere in Buddhism, then the advice is usually to give it the benefit of the doubt, we say in English, which is presumption. I presume that it is correct. I'm not certain. That's the definition of presumption. Come to the correct conclusion, but you have no certainty about it. So I will presume that it is correct and see what follows from that. And what follows from that is Lamrim, 3 scopes for better human, better rebirth, get liberation from rebirth, help everybody else get liberation from rebirth, so it's there from the beginning. Cause and effect, karma only makes sense. Somebody has been, wonderful High Lama, great practitioner, and they die from some horrible cancer. So, it doesn't make sense in one lifetime. Cause and effect doesn't make sense because, rebirth is based on beginningless cause and effect. And so, things don't come from no cause, out of nothing. So there has to be a prior cause, and if it gives an effect, why would it stop giving an effect? So there's cause and effect. Everybody's been my mother, doesn't make any sense without rebirth. And Tantra, Nutra Yoga Tantra, transforming death, bardo, and rebirth. If you don't believe in rebirth, what in the world are you doing with, the practice? So then you see, well, giving it the benefit of the doubt, all the benefits that come from, Lamrim and these other things, then the gaining certainty, at least in my own experience, gets, what shall we say, gets stronger and stronger. You're still not quite sure, stronger. I must say, in my own experience, which is very, very rare, knowing Rinpoche in 2 lifetimes and having some little understanding of, what the self is, that the self is not, the old Rinpoche is now the new Rinpoche, because they're not the same person, they're neither the same nor neither identical nor different. But knowing the two, and my connection with the two and his connection with me has taken me over the borderline of really being convinced. But that's a very, very rare experience. And to wait until you get shamatha to be able to, gain that conviction, that also is very, very rare. Hardly anybody. His Holiness says he hasn't attained shamatha, so what hope is there for us? But, and very, very few of the great Tibetan masters were known for having attained shamatha. So, don't think it's so easy. But based on logic, the conviction gets stronger and stronger and stronger, but it takes many, many years. Many years. And we have to be patient with gaining conviction in many aspects of the Dharma. It's hard to, I think there's a lot of things, the gaining conviction that there is such a thing as enlightenment, or there is such a thing as liberation. That's not easy. Not at all. I mean, how convinced are you that there really is such a thing? So, for most of us, well, whether His Holiness is enlightened or not, if I could become like that, that would be good enough. So we go in that direction, isn't it? It's like that. So we're going in that direction. But is it really possible to reach that final point? That requires a lot of logic, actually, in terms of the nature of the mind. And then you have to understand the nature of the mind, which is not the simplest of the voidness of the mind. And the relation of body to mind and speech to mind. So all the qualities of a Buddha. So anyway, just an aside.
So I had a question about karma. So I read in Bodhisattva Way of Life in the 9th chapter that when Shantideva is debating with the realists,
With whom?
if people who assert things to exist objectively.
Realists.
Realists, I don't know who
That's
that
written by
is.
Stephen Batchelor.
What is realist?
I think the people that
Oh, those who-
establishment, external to establishment.
Okay,
for Chantikas.
right, okay.
They say that murdering an illusory person, like a person who is an illusion,
Murdering an illusory person.
doesn't produce negative karma because it doesn't have a mind. An illusion cannot create a mind. That's the reason in Shantideva gives. And then later he says that having an illusion-like mind can produce karma. But that's not relating to my question. I wonder how come that killing an illusion person, like an illusion, doesn't produce negative karma because it doesn't have a mind. Because I think if there is a very, very good illusion, which to the subject, to the person killing it, is indistinguishable from like a real person, then why wouldn't it create the same karma?
First of all, I must confess I don't specifically recall that verse. But in any case, by analogy, if you kill somebody in a dream, then it is the type of action which is not reinforced. It's one that will not have the certainty of which lifetime it will ripen in. It comes in that category. It will have negative consequences, but it's uncertain. You know, when they talk about certainty and uncertainty of the ripening of karma, there is the certainty of which lifetime it will ripen in. Either it will ripen this lifetime, and there are certain things that will ripen in this lifetime, the exact next lifetime, or a specific lifetime after that. And then it's uncertain which one after that. So that's the uncertain. It will ripen in. And then there's the different type of uncertainty, which is whether it will ripen at all in terms of purification. But then Tsongkhapa adds this thing about the burnt seeds that I was explaining before. To kill an illusory, I mean, things are there is a difference between an illusion and like an illusion. So an illusion doesn't have a mind. Sentient beings that are like an illusion do have a mind. So, and even just the destructive action of mind, of thinking about and deciding to kill someone, has negative consequences. So you have to, look at the, So he says that the mind that thinks to kill an illusion, but sentient beings are like an illusion, that they appear to be truly existent, but they're not. However, they do have a mind, and there are negative qualities because they're like an illusion. So, I mean, the quote that came to my mind was this thing about a stupa. How can, circumambulating the stupa, which doesn't have a mind, build up positive force? And then there's this thing about the Garuda medicine and something like that Shantideva builds up, mentions. But the point is that it still has, you still develop positive force, even though the stupa doesn't have a mind. So I would think by analogy, even, killing something that doesn't have a mind, well, you're not killing it. I mean, this is the point. You're not killing it. Therefore, it is not the act of killing. If you want to analyze, it's not the act of killing. If you kill a department store dummy, if you shoot the department store dummy, I mean, we don't see, a magician illusion and kill it, but put it in, or a ventriloquist dummy. Okay, so you shoot the dummy. The intention was to kill. You're an idiot to think that you could kill the dummy. That's besides the point. But, I mean, this becomes a very significant discussion. The significant discussion is playing all these video games of killing the space invader. Does that build up a negative potential that any problem that comes up, you want to kill it? And also that they train these people in the army who bomb with, from airplanes by, killing and bombing in a video game, that it's not people that you're killing. And so they become desensitized. So you'd have to say it has negative consequences for sure. But it's not the negative consequence of killing.
But why is that?
Pardon?
Why is it not the negative consequences of killing?
Because it doesn't have a mind.
But I wonder,
Killing is taking a life.
like, I understand this from this point, but if I look from the point of the mind, if the mind cannot differentiate, let's say someone runs over a person in a car, like he runs, and then he runs over, hit and run, and then he continues on, he's sure he killed the person, but actually it was just a sack of potatoes. But he's completely 100% sure that he just killed a person. And let's say it's an actual person, from the subjective aspect of his mind, he doesn't know the difference. So why doesn't he create the same karma?
Because the person who was run over experiences being killed. So that happens.
How does his
The
mind
sack
know?
of potatoes doesn't experience being killed. It could be experienced being crushed, but it doesn't experience anything. It doesn't have a mind. Whether you know it or not, someone has lost their life, and you have caused them. Now, the difference is whether there was the intention to kill. That will affect the consequences on you. Nevertheless, the consequences of running over the person is that they lost their life. So these are different, different from, the person, the accident victim's point of view and from your point of view. And from your point of view, if the intention wasn't there, it is not. Remember, we made the differentiation between the karmic result that will, become a throwing karma for a future life, and one that will just contribute to the suffering of suffering. So the hit and run, you killed somebody. Well, no, I mean, you didn't have the intention. It was an accident. If you kill somebody in an accident, you hit them by accident, so you didn't intend to kill them, that wouldn't be an intentional killing, so that might not be the type of killing that could throw you into another rebirth. but it would certainly cause you a tremendous amount of suffering even in this lifetime. You'd feel horrible. Guilty and, whatever. Yes.
If there is an intention to kill, and it's delusion and rejoicing, but one thinks it's real, but it's an illusion, then that part of the karma wouldn't be the same if it's a real person or an illusion, isn't it?
Well, now we get into another variable, which is there. If you think that there are different aspects there. I'm just thinking of a paranoid person that thinks, they hear a noise in the dark in their home and they shoot. So there's fear there. There's that. And then there is just no anger necessarily or fear, but, someone who has, delusions of, monsters or whatever, and goes around, or somebody that has psychosomatic itching and thinks that there's insects on them and is always slapping to try to kill them. So, these are different variables, in terms of the result of the karma, the disturbing emotion that's there. Is it a strong one? Is it a weak one? Is it just ignorance? Or is there anger involved? This will make a difference in terms of the killing. But what Vasubandhu says is that it has to be not, intention is besides the point, but there has to be the intention to kill, but also it has to be he's talking about in the 10 destructive actions, the killing that will ripen. The consequences of killing will ripen in throwing karma in rebirth. Other type of killings won't have that type of, the third type of suffering of, continuing aggregates. It'll have the first type of suffering of suffering. So, and in the 10 destructive actions, it has to have been thought about beforehand. If you look at the Sanskrit word, it means that. It was thought about beforehand with one of the 3 actions of mind and decided upon. Then you do it. So done on purpose. So that's slightly different from the intention. The intention will come from that. But you can have the intention to kill spontaneously without having, just on the spot. A mosquito lands on your hand and you go, bam, like that. You didn't think it over first, should I do it or not? I think I'll do it, and then you do it. So the really heavy one is that you really thought about it. As I used the example, you hear a mosquito buzzing in the night and it's keeping you awake, and you decide, do I really want to get out of bed and, turn the light on and hunt it and kill it? Or just sleep with the sheet over my head. So then it's really heavy. Back here. The lady in the back.
Thank you. I'd like to perhaps to clarify an additional perspective. How would Chitamatrans describe or explain this situation? Is it that they, from their system, would, I wouldn't agree, but would they say it's killing someone physically and the intention of killing is the same?
Well, no. I mean, the intention is a mental factor. The killing is a physical action. I mean, just because it says mind only, we shouldn't think that, Chitamatrans don't have a body and don't have actions of the body and actions of speech. They do. And that, there are, the table is made of wood. So, they still accept that. They're just talking about when you perceive something with your senses, the appearance that arises comes from the mind. And when you think about it, then the appearance, the characteristics of it, good, bad, and so on, that's coming from the mind. But it's not saying that the table comes from the mind. So in terms of killing, what they say is that the troublemaker, the one that can be the throwing karma in the actions of body and speech, are the urging. They don't say that it's the revealing form. Well, they say the form is revealing, but it's not karma.
Thank you.
Right. But that's a common mistake that we have when we hear mind only. It's Mahayana. There have to be other sentient beings that you're working for the benefit. It can't be that the sentient beings all exist in your head. That doesn't make any sense. Yeah.
I have a question, which is struck my mind for a while now, and it is about the continuum, and when there is no inherent self, and the consciousness jumps from moment to moment, what is it that perceives that continuum?
That perceives it, that cognizes it.
Yes. When the consciousness is changing all the time?
What is perceiving the consciousness? What is perceiving the self? What are you asking?
When the consciousness is just a continuum and there's no inherent...
Everything is a continuum.
Right, everything is a continuum. But how comes that we take it as
a solid continuum?
As a solid continuum, because it makes no sense to me that when it's a continuum and everything changes, how comes? You know what I mean?
It's a very good question, and this is debated between the as I said, there's two positions: the false aspectarian and the true aspectarian. The true aspectarian, the Galupas, favor that, and the false ones, the non-Galupas, take that. But and it goes back, long ago in India. But the point being, remember we spoke about a whole pervades not only the parts of the table, but also all the each of the sensory information, sensory qualities.
What is
the
pervades?
word that's used? Pardon?
Another word for pervades?
It includes, it encompasses.
Okay.
It pervades means it covers all of it. It includes all of it. But also it pervades or covers moments, temporal. So it's not only spatial and sensory quality things that the whole pervades, but it also pervades the continuity over time. And why is that? Because of the there are defining characteristics, and there is that you can distinguish. Otherwise, you can't distinguish anything. And there are individual ones, and there are general ones. The individual ones, that whatever your name is. What's your name?
Daniel.
Daniel. So there's Daniel, the individual one, but also the general one of human being. So you have the general characteristic and the individual characteristic, and over time you retain the same individual and general characteristic features. So on the basis of that, the whole continues over time as well. So then the true aspectarian, Galupas say this, that when I see you, I also see I see the whole, and the whole, lasts, over space, all the parts of you, the back of your head, the physical sensation of shaking your hand, and not just one moment. But then, Rinpoche was saying that, Rinpoche, it comes from Chandrakirti, that the person in this moment is not the same person in the next moment. And so this is, things, remember we said yesterday that everything arises and perishes simultaneously. And the next moment is going to arise because all the causes are there. When the causes are complete, the result will arise with the proper circumstances. So and this gets into our friend the perishing, then there's the perishing of the perishing, the having perished, of the perishing of the having perished. So that provides the continuity, and that the next moment will not be exactly the same, but it is in sequence. And then you have, sequence of kind and a sequence of matter, of substance. And those are, different types of things, the clay and the pot, the clay jug, that has a sequence of the material thing, and mind in this lifetime and mind in the next lifetime has a continuity in terms of type of phenomenon it is. So there are two types of continuums.
Yes, but somehow it's not satisfying for me. I'll be honest.
Well, the whole extends over time. If you think of a movie,
I know
a movie is
pictures.
made of individual frames,
I know.
but we say that, I saw Star Wars.
Yes, but then I am, my consciousness is perceiving the movie and the frameworks. But what is it that perceives the continuum of me as a person?
Well, are you getting into the reflexive awareness?
I don't know. That's why I'm asking.
What is aware that you are aware of something?
Yeah.
Okay, so the Sautrantikas and Chittamatras, and I forget whether the Yogacaras for Tantrikas assert it, did they?
Yes, but the Sautrantikas, Svatantrikas not.
Pardon? Sautrantika not, but Sautrantikas for Tantra, but the Yogacara, I suspect that they don't assert Alaya Vijnana, but they assert Rangrik. So, draw up from that file in my mind. They assert that there is yet another way of knowing something called reflexive awareness, which is only aware of the consciousness, the ways, the consciousness and the mental factors in a cognition, but not the object. and it remembers that, so, I mean, it stores that in a sense, so that when you recall it, that you can recall that you had that cognition. Well, I knew that. I studied Chinese 60 years ago. I haven't used it. But if somebody, I can't remember the word, for this object, but then somebody tells me it, and I say, oh yeah, I remember, I knew that. Tell me your name, oh, I remember, you told me that. So it records that. And for Prasangika, they refute that and say that, then you would need to have, the third, infinite regression. Then you'd have to have, something that knows that you had that, so that logical inconsistency of it. So that they say that, remember did we have it? Explicit and implicit apprehension. Apprehension is when the cognition of something is both correct and has certainty. So when it is correct and has certainty, that's a technical word, which I translate as apprehension. And then you can either have something that appears, so it's explicitly known, and simultaneously, not necessarily that you have this, but simultaneously you would have something implicit which doesn't appear. And the easiest example is table, not a chair. It appears as a table and doesn't appear, not a chair doesn't appear, but it's not a chair. So similarly, implicitly you know that the thing has taken place. So Prasangika explains that that recording thing is implicitly part of the way of being aware of it, of the consciousness of it. So it says like that. So that, is aware. I mean, but you also need to bear in mind, horrible, that the self knows things. The self is aware. Because we say, I know that, I see you, and so on. So in it's not so, the Samkhya system says as well that, the characteristic of the self independently of the body, when it becomes, liberated, it has a quality of awareness, but no object.
So space?
No object.
But
no object.
No object.
No object.
Sky,
So,
space is no object.
Not space. It doesn't have an object, but it just has a quality of awareness. Only knows objects in connection with being in a body. It's their theory, I mean, you don't have to accept it. Buddhists don't accept it. But my point being that Buddhism also says that the self is aware. So how is it aware? So they say, well, the defining characteristic of the mental consciousness is the common locus. In other words, the place where you have both the defining characteristic of mental consciousness and the defining characteristic of a person. So Sautrantika says it's mental consciousness. Svatantrika says it's mental consciousness. Chittamatra says that it is Alaya Vijnana, foundation consciousness, has the defining characteristic of the person. Therefore, Sangha says defining characters can't be found anywhere, so it's not truly established in any of these places. And the Vaibhashikas say, well, the defining characteristic is just there. You don't have to be in a basis. That's why you can know it by itself. So that's what I was saying. This dormant, I forget exactly what the technical term is, but what I was referring to when you're asleep, there's the mental consciousness takes the object, but the self, even though its defining characteristic is there, it doesn't take the object. So that's dormant awareness. There's another technical term, I've forgotten it at the moment. No, non-discerning is something else. That's something else. Something else. Otra cosa, something else. So, but how do we know? How do you know the continuum is your question. How do you know the continuum? Because implicit, with each moment of cognition is the awareness of that it's taking place. And there's a whole and over time, conventionally.
So the implicit awareness of taking place continues.
Continues.
This is
sure.
why.
Right. Because, in each moment, you take the thing of a movie. You see one frame of the movie. Yeah. I'm watching Star Wars.
Yeah.
So we say, the whole over time, even on the basis of one moment.
Okay. Yeah, I have to think about it. Thank
you.
Yeah.
Well, just as I say, I see you, whereas actually I'm only perceiving the colored shapes of the front part of your body. That's all that I'm perceiving. And yet on that basis, I say I'm seeing you. Likewise, we see one moment or one scene of Star Wars and we say, I'm watching Star Wars. Mm-hmm. Same thing, just different dimension, spatial or, temporal.
Okay.
Yeah. I took it. I remembered. Implicit.
Maybe as a closing for today, because it's anyway quite late.
Boo.
Boo. I know. But that's the job of the management. Yeah.
I see.
Maybe a little bit in sense of our learning. Maybe let's come back to our topic, to our teaching from today, and maybe I would like to ask you if you can summarize shortly what Rinpoche said today. So maybe if you go really roughly through the different stages we discussed, very roughly, just as a summary, to have a closing and to be back on our original topic, I think would be, in sense of learning, I think would be very, very good. But maybe we give you a time limit, or so then it's really challenging for you. But really
that's
summarizing.
Like in a presidential debate, you ask a huge question and you have to answer it in 1 minute.
Not in 1 minute, but we have for sure another 5 to 10 minutes, but just really give us a short summary of today's topics, I think, as a closing, so that we go home with this imprint and maybe can think over the nights. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's fine, no problem. The discussion, before today, we had spoken about ignorance, which has to do with specifically how the self exists of a person, but because it's prasangika, included there is how all phenomenon exist, as part of that first link. For the other tenet systems, it's not. And on the basis of that, then we, there was self-grasping was projecting, an impossible way of existing onto me and everything, but specifically on me. And then unawareness, we take it to in an inverted way, and we then we don't. We know it incorrectly. We take it to mind. That's a mental factor. Take it to mind in an incorrect way. And on that basis, then we develop, we explained it yesterday, you feel insecure, you get disturbing mental states, mental factors, you want to get attachment, get something to you, get something away from you. And then with that, together with, all the other mental factors, that cause the, your behavior to arise. So motivation isn't only the emotion, but it is all the things that make the action arise, consciousness, etc. Then we do something, either think something, which is specifically I'm going to commit one of these 7 actions of body or speech. We decide to do it. Then either we do it or we don't do it. It's bad enough to decide, but in addition, if we do it, it's even stronger. And that itself acts as a positive or negative force or potential. The doing it, the whole act, the karmic pathway. And then afterwards, there is a potential, likewise a potential, but now it is a potential which takes on the essential nature of a seed, and that is then what is planted in the consciousness. There are also the tendencies themselves, that's not mentioned in the text, but there are these potentials which become like a seed, which are either destructive or constructive. Those are the ones that can, when they get activated, will become a throwing karmic impulse to prod the mind consciousness to go to another rebirth. So now there is the causal time, when in this lifetime, and then there is the resultant time, which is the moment of conception. Okay, now the moment after that, what happens is that you have name and form. So form is the form aggregate. So then we had the whole discussion of what is the obtaining cause, for that. And, there were the, depending on the tenet system, but we, decided that, one explanation is that it's a very subtle form that goes on, like the formless realm being have, some subtle form like that, or, these non-revealing forms, or, whatever. So that is the form. It's described as the form perishes. And so that means that it arises and perishes simultaneously. So then you get your perishing and all this sort of stuff. And name, Chandrakirti explains it as the other mental, which are the ones that are ways of knowing, which would be the aggregate of feeling, distinguishing, and consciousness, and other affecting variables, which include all the mental factors, plus the person, the non-congruent affecting variables. That's in there too, in that bag of everything else, basically. So all of these, according to Chandrakirti's explanation is that they are seeking for a name, to become manifest that they have a name. So that's why it is under the power of the distinguishing aggregate, because the distinguishing distinguishes this from that and can then give a name. So it's explained like that. From other explanations, not Chandrakirti's, they are nameable. They can be given a name, but they're not manifest yet. So several explanations of why it's called name. Then, and that consciousness is not yet differentiated into the different types of, sense consciousnesses. So the next step, this is in the womb, we're talking about the development of the fetus, of the embryo, that eventually it's going to, divide enough so that you get the beginnings of the sensory, the cognitive senses, the cells. So when we talk about the, I forget how he translated it, but they're the stimulators. These are there's 12 of them. And so there are the 5 physical cognitive sensors and the mind sensor, and then there are the 5 sensory objects. So they talk about the 6 of these, so they're only talking about the physical basis. So they were talking about that the form aggregate has now differentiated enough so that you get the cells of, eyes and ears and, nose and like that. So those are the cognitive stimulators, and they are the gateways through which because relying on that, on the cognitive sensor as the dominating condition, it dominates, it makes it that it's going to be an eye consciousness or an ear consciousness, that it's the gateway through which that consciousness will arise. So now the next step is that you're going to start to have the sensors will develop enough so that they will start to be able to have an impression of the sensory objects. So these are still the stimulators. So these come because now, this is similar to the Sautrantika, not like the Semzampa, the Chittamatras, that the object and the, we're sitting here and, there's an object, and now we come in and there's our eye sensors. So, there's a sequence there. And then the light from the object, or however we're going to say, will come in. And then you will have consciousness arise. So you have the, there's 2 presentations in Chandrakirti. So he says that you have either the object, which is the focal condition, you have the sensor, which is the dominating condition, you have, and very interesting, the Tibetan word, the word is light, and light gives illumination. And then you have space, which there's no obstruction, they're saying, to the cognition arising. And then from the taking to mind, and the taking to mind is putting all of that together, it's described. Putting that all together, then consciousness arises. This is not the consciousness that was the third link. This is now consciousness, eye consciousness, ear consciousness, and so on. And when they say that there's 3 conditions, that light is actually referring to the light of the immediately preceding consciousness that has the things of clarity and awareness, and that clarity which allows for any, mental hologram to arise. That is the light which then gives that quality to the consciousness that's going to arise. So that's how you get the 3 conditions from these 5 conditions. Then then you get contact. Contact has 2 meanings. According to Chandrakirti, it is the actual physical contact of the object, the sensor, and the consciousness. They all come together, and then you get and then there's contacting awareness, actually. Contacting awareness is the mental factor, one of the 5 ever functioning. So to just translate that as contact is very confusing because it is a mental factor. So it is contacting awareness. So that is experiencing that contact coming together in a pleasant way, as being pleasant or unpleasant. So and it's not established, the others would say it's established on the side of the object, but actually it's on the side of the mind. So smelly cheese, one person, sees it and experiences seeing that as pleasant. It's a pleasant thing to see. Watching a horror movie, some people find it unpleasant, some people find it pleasant and amusing, right? So it is how that contacting awareness, how it is experienced. And that word pleasant or unpleasant can also be, literally, it comes to mind. So it can be attractive or unattractive. That's another way of understanding the variables there in contacting awareness. So it's contact and then it's contacting awareness. And on the basis of that, then the response to it is when it's pleasant, is happy. When it is unpleasant, it's unhappy. You have to be very careful to not use the word, not get confused by the word feeling, because then we confuse it with pleasure and pain. Pleasure and pain are sense objects, objects of physical sensation. Not talking about that. They're talking about happy and unhappy. Happy is that feeling when it arises, you would like for it to continue, not necessarily clinging to it, thirsting for it. That word craving, the Sanskrit word is thirsting. You're thirsty, that you don't want to let go. You want to keep it, have more, or you don't have it. So, thirsting, you want it. So that's a very strong word. The Tibetans don't translate it as thirst. They translate it as craving. Happy is that feeling that you'd like it to not end. Unhappy is the feeling that when you experience it, you'd like it to end. And that neither happy nor unhappy is referring to the 4th jhana in the form realm, when you have no longer happy or unhappy, either in terms of happy and unhappy can be with sense cognition. So, and you don't, it's a spectrum. So don't think of happy as whoopee, I'm so happy. It's not like that. It's just, that you would like it to continue. You don't want it to end. It's okay. You're comfortable. How do you know that it's in every moment? When you stop looking at what's over here in front of you and you look somewhere else, that's unhappiness. You were unhappy with staying looking at this, and now you look at that. So you see, we're not talking about heavy duty, happy, unhappy. It's in every moment. We're usually not even aware of it. That's the, how you experience things as a result of karma. That, I can look at this and I'm happy to stay with it, and I can look at it and say, ooh, it's horrible, and I don't want to look at it. Like that. Because I experience it as pleasant or unpleasant. That's also coming from karma. So then, because we have this feeling of happy or unhappy, it's either, while I'm looking at something or hearing music, we hear, I don't know, maybe you like it, maybe you don't, techno or whatever. Some people love it. Some people find it just noise. So, whatever the older generation, whatever the younger generation is, obviously horrible noise. There's their music. So we then thirsting, now so now what happens is all of that is developed in the womb. So now what is going to act, and all along we have the karmic potentials. Karmic potentials, the basis of imputation of that, in other words, what it's tied to, the non-prasangikas say it's tied to the mental consciousness, where you remember, or the alaya vijnana, where you remember it had the defining characteristic of the person. So, prasangika says the basis of it is just the person, that it's tied to the person. So anyway, the conventional person. So now you have the thirsting out of that happiness. I don't want to be parted from it. I want to be parted from that unhappiness. That neither happy nor unhappy on the fourth jhana and formless realm. I don't want it to decline. And then on the basis of that, then there is, engaging in something that will, to make me happy. So either the object that you were feeling, happy or unhappy about, or one of these views that, thinking me will make me happy, thinking it's mine will make me happy, standing on one leg is going to make me happy, grasping for an extreme, that, the self will end at rebirth, at death, so I don't have to worry what's going to happen. All these sort of views that we think if we hold them, it'll make us happy. And that activates, this is the link of what's translated as becoming. It actually means further existence, and that is the activated potential, which is throwing karma. And then that throwing karma, because it's activated when the circumstances are there, the body doesn't support it anymore, then there is the death existence, and then old age. Then there's the, death, bardo, the bardo existence, the before the next, and then there's birth, and before dying, and then the next death, that type of thing, and aging starts the moment after conception. So that's sort of the sequence.
Great. Great. Thank you very much.
More than
this
1 minute.
This was really worth spent additional 20 minutes, I think. Thank you very much.
Well, I'll tell you, that is going over very slowly. What you need to be able to have is that whole thing in 1 second. That's what you need to have. Because, when the old Serkong Rinpoche was teaching Lamrim, I remember he taught the whole Lamrim, and then he said, well, now we'll have a meditation. We will do the entire Lamrim for 2 minutes. And people went, and he said, okay, well, 3 minutes. But, and then he said that you need, when the Lord of Death comes Doesn't wait for you to sit nicely and, set your motivation and all of that. It has to be instant. The time that when you put one foot in the saddle till you put the foot over the saddle, you should be able to do the whole Lam Rim. So like in the Lam Rim, the longer version, the 12 links is one little part of it. All of that should be like that. You just have it. The whole thing is together, and it all comes up simultaneously. And that is what you need to have to do Tantra practice, where you have the 34 arms and body, mind, and speech. So you have the 37, aspects leading to enlightenment, and you have the 2 truths, and you have the 16 voidnesses, and you have all of that, the 9 scriptural categories, and you have all of that simultaneously. And the pride of the deity on that, to do the real thing. So that's why you need meditation. Means accustoming and going over and over and over, like playing the piano. Over and over and over. And then it becomes, you make such a strong neural pathway that it's, from a physical point of view, a neural pathway that is so strong that it will just be instantaneous. That's what you're aiming for. Nidekambadi Sangye Shikdu Mikte Warki Raghunatha Shingla Jubasho Idang Guru Ratna Dalakam Neyata Yami Rinpoche Harake Gyurche Gebanamba Mebayang Kone Kondu Belwarsho. Oh yeah, and you're supposed to have combined shamatha and vipassana on that. Just as an additional